All right. You, sir or madam, have just clicked on episode 4 of a 4-part series focused on how we learn to do things of an artistically creative nature and how we teach others to use the creative gifts they have been given. In this series, I have had the privilege to be here discussing this topic with Sydney West. If you didn't catch the first video, let me catch you up. Sydney is our middle child, so yeah, she's kind of important to her mom and me and to you as well, trust me. Anyhow, she is also a musician and a professor of commercial music at a university. And we have been talking about her 5-point philosophy of teaching and how each of those points can be used to develop the creative skills, talents, and abilities of others. Sup, Sydney?
Hey.
So for more information on Sydney's background and to hear her thoughts on the other points in her philosophy, hitting on communication, collaboration, and technique, check out the other episodes in this series. I'll pop a card and a link in the description for the playlist of those videos here on YouTube. And if you watch or listen on a different platform, you'll have to do a little searching for it yourself. Sydney, episode 4. Let's get to it. So the 4th point in your philosophy of education is about technology. In the area of creative education that you teach specifically, there is little to no possibility of doing the thing well if you don't have a foundational understanding of the technology used in commercial music. Mics, preamps, interfaces, DAWs, plugins, computers, patch bays, consoles, tape machines, and yes, even the dreaded AI. Technology is a big part of pretty much every part of commercial music. Now, that is not the case in every part of every creative endeavor, for instance, watercolor or oil painting, but even then, technology can still be a part of the process. So when it comes to technology, we have to have an understanding of it. How do you see technology and its place in your educational process and in the use of technology in your own creative endeavors?
Yeah, so technology, especially in my area, teaching very specifically, I teach technologies, software. I teach the use of these, but also my goal is to have students leave my classes proficient, not necessarily an expert, but on their way to, if they want to put in the work, they could become an expert in a software or in the use of software in combination with equipment. And so for me, one of the main reasons that I was hired is my inclination towards software. Especially music software, but I do have the ability to use video editing software as well. That's also something that I've done a little bit in a professional capacity. But just my active and current understanding of technology has been a huge motivator for my inclusion at the collegiate level, instructing in music, but also it's been a huge motivator, just the way that I interact with technology and the way that it makes sense to me has been a motivator for me to continue to learn on my own, which I think is really important that, what we do, it can't always line up, but if you're going to come up with a dream job for yourself, come up with something that you are, motivated to continue to learn things about, right? If you're going to come up with something that's your goal, your endeavor that you strive after, that was something that became very clear to me when I first started, was that I love learning about new software, new gear, how it all works together, right? So in my classrooms, I always start with the fundamentals of teaching my students how to use computers. And not just like, here's the mouse, here's how to use a keyboard. They didn't grow up with like typing class like I did. Like, I had, we learned how to use computer. Like, I'm not talking about like, here's a computer and this is what it can do for you. It's more, here's how you can make your computer actually work with you. Not against you, but with you. And so, I go to the fundamentals of here's how we go into the settings and we really get our computers set up for success before we ever get into a software. before we ever get into using a piece of equipment with our computer. I think it's so important to start there. I also think it's very important when teaching technology to provide not excessive, because we always have excessive amounts of information, but a good amount of succinct information on the topic that you're teaching. So if it's I'm introducing computer basics to my students, I teach in a Mac lab. So I teach with desktop Macs for my students, but I've also taught in a lab that was Windows computers as well. And so I have functionality and I'm fluent in both OS types. And so really highlighting what makes an operating system work for what you're doing is a huge part of that. And then once we have that understanding of, because if we start into a software and we just assume that someone knows how to use a computer, that's where you start to see, generally, if there's a grade assigned, that's where I start to see grades slip, is because there's a frustration that the computer isn't working for me. It's not working the way that yours is working. It's not working the way I expect it to be working. And so if you're going to be learning something in a technology area, I would encourage you to learn the device that you're learning that technology on first. First and foremost, knowing the device is going to be the key to unlocking your success in actually using the software. But then once we have that foundation of, I know how to use my computer and I know how to use my interface, or I know how to, I know how to set up my speakers, or I know how to set up my, lighting, and I know how to set up my camera, or I know the different settings in my piece of equipment that I'm using. Then you can go into the actual application of the software, which is, I teach, as I mentioned before, I teach 7 software actively. One of them I'm a certified instructor, so I certify others in, and then 2 of them I teach every single week. And then the other 3, the other 4 I'm teaching semi-regularly, right? So in all of these software, the starting place is always, let's get used to how it looks, right? Let's get used to what's here, what's in my purview of what I'm actually doing. And then once we're inside of the software, then we start into, all right, this is how these different modes work. This workflow works best in this mode. And then and then the really the more advanced layer, as most people would consider it, would be learning key binds, or creating your own key binds, key commands, shortcuts, whatever you want to call them. They all mean the same thing, but being able to access menu functions, being able to access settings functions, being able to access tools of the software without having to use my mouse. I use an engraving software, music engraving software often. Dorico is my main use, and in my everyday use of that software, I never use my mouse on my keyboard. I have one hand that's on my MIDI controller keyboard, and one hand that's on my computer keyboard, generally around the arrow keys. But I'm constantly using key commands. I'm constantly using both hands, generally simultaneously, to do something, which is why in one of our previous videos, I did mention that I think of technology, I think of these software as an instrument. I learn them as if I was learning an instrument. I learn my key commands as if I'm recalling how to do, first inversion of a C chord, right? I learn my key commands in the same way. I internalize them in the same way. The hardest part, I think, with software and technology in commercial music is going between software. Like I said, I'm in a previous video, I'm certified in Pro Tools. I teach Pro Tools actively, and then I also teach Ableton Live is another software I teach. And sometimes I'll be in Ableton and I'm pressing, command equals. Like, why is it not switching to my other view? Why is it not switching? Or I'm in Pro Tools and I'm pressing tab and it's not switching views, because that's the key command for Ableton Live, right? And that's generally the biggest issue for me. But I've internalized these software items, right? And then that is what really takes me on the path toward not allowing the software to run my time, but allowing my time to be better used when I am in my software. So when I talk about music technology as one of my teaching or the parts of my teaching philosophy, I want students to know how to use the technology for their project, not to allow the technology to use them or to waste their time or to distract them. I am one to get easily distracted by the cool things. There's a new update to my software that I use all the time, and I'm sitting there and going through all the little things that they've updated and trying them out. And oh, I found a new plugin, and I'm going to try this new plugin, and I get easily distracted. But when I teach technology, one of my biggest things is, and I talked about this with technique as well, but templates, working in templates, working with having presets this is a preset that I have in a plugin for this sound that I'm looking for. Or this is a template for this software that I use that automatically loads in all the things that I normally use so that I don't get distracted, right? So that I kind of keep myself on track. We're so used to being able to do things quickly, which, you mentioned AI, you mentioned the inability really to traverse the music industry without interacting with technology. And it's very true. I think that when the internet introduced itself at early use of the internet, we started to see what that could mean for the music industry. But really, once we got into the 2000s, mid 2000s is when we started to see the impact that it really was going to have on accessibility in the digital age of music as an industry. Really, we have more people that are able to create and produce and output music than ever before with the digital age of our technology, right? With tape decks and just I'll spare you the history lesson, but with previous technology, a lot of it was large. It took up a lot of space. It was expensive. It was hard to get access to. But as we've entered this digital era and this information era of just our music industry, and I'll kind of keep it there. I won't necessarily go to larger capacities, but in the music industry, as we've reached this digital age, we have more than ever. We have this overpopulated industry, right? We have a lot of people saying a lot of things. We have a lot of technologies that do the same things or similar things. And how do I make the choice of what's right for me? How do I make the choice for how to use that software? How do I make the choice of what interface to buy, what speakers to buy, what mic to get, what stand's going to be best? How do I format my space? Do I do a specific type of soundproofing in my space? Do I need to have a studio? There's all these questions, right? That kind of float around. And it's an amazing thing to be able to have a studio in your own home. To be able to have that, you don't have to go out to a studio to create music. It's an amazing thing to have a whole computer in such a small living space like a laptop, right? And these laptops can do everything that a desktop computer can do. And you can take it with you wherever you want, right? So at the end of the day, music technology and technology in general, they are grafted into the entity that is the music industry, which is what I solely focus on in what I'm working in. But both of these things are also grafted into the visual arts, the performing arts, right? They are seeing the introduction of this. I think of like operas now. Opera is I mention it a lot. I've sung in operas. It's an art form that I have a lot of respect for, and I have a lot of enjoyment in that area. But it is a much smaller art form than it was when it originally was introduced. One, because it is incredibly difficult to be exceptional and in that art form, but also it's just the type of music, the style it's it's become outdated. But in more modern opera, they are grafting in technology, right? They're grafting in these screens that are the backdrops. Rather than using traditional props and sets, they'll use a digital background. That it's not a projector; it's literally these digital screens that are creating a more realistic or hyper realistic experience that is maybe able to modernize an art form that is less popular than it used to be, right? And we're seeing this in a lot of different creative arts. And I've loved seeing this. I don't want to see technology overtake the arts or overrun the human side of the arts. And I don't think we ever will see that without pushback from just who we are as creatives internally. We create. I mean, whether I'm using technology as a tool or not, I will create something. That is a fact about me as a person, right? But if I can use technology to enhance what I'm doing, or to modify, or to really bring into the world a more modern context of what I'm doing, I'm going to explore those opportunities. And so when I'm teaching technology, that's really a goal of mine, is to teach safe or healthy ways of using technology. And I do say safe first because I think that that's a very important thing to talk about. Safety in, just the use of especially things like generative AI and how that can impact your creative thumbprint, so to speak, in our world, but also just knowledge in the use of how technology can enhance what you're doing, not really overtake your creative voice, right? It can enhance or improve your creative voice, but not remove you from the picture, right? So that would be my main inclusion of music technology. And obviously is that I teach it, but I also want to teach safe ways, healthy ways, and productive ways of using that technology for better workflows and better output.
Yeah. And the thing about technology that, again, you're talking about the majority of your students are younger than you. I know we've talked about the handful of students that you've had the privilege of teaching that were older than you, people that have come second phase of their life and wanting to get an education in something new, and they see things from a different perspective. But if we focus on just the students that are in their 20s today, teenagers into their early 20s, and I think we've talked about it before in one of the other points. There's an inherent thing with technology. It's been around. I think you were just discussing that just a minute ago. It's always been around, and so it's not that we have to teach them what technology is. We have to, teach them what technology can do in a specific context. But at the same time, because the younger generations, and I know I sound like the old guy, but I mean, it is what it is. The younger generations have a tendency to lean on technology, not lean into it. There's a difference. When you lean on something, you're resting on it. You're allowing it to carry the weight of the thing. And in this specific case, we're talking about the weight of the creative endeavor, right? When you lean against technology, you can use it, but you're also pushing back against it some. To allow you to have the opportunity to express using technology, but also at the same time without technology. And for me, this is, you get excited about some things, I get excited about others when it comes to this kind of stuff. But the technology, we're talking 100 years ago when portable recording devices were first introduced. And there was a guy, I can't remember his name. This is Music History 101, and it's been a long time. But there's this guy that went up in the Appalachian Mountains, in the foothills of the Appalachians, and He famously recorded all of these good old boys, these for lack of a better term, these hillbillies from the hills, playing all of this amazing music that no one had ever heard, because it was ancestral music. Again, if you think about, you said not to get in history, but the Appalachians are full of people from Ireland, with historical roots in Ireland and places like in similar areas around the UK, and they brought with them musical influences that are unique, like fiddle playing in Ireland and in the UK is very similar to the way the fiddle is played in the Appalachians. So there's this thing. So I know I got kind of off technology, but there's this thing. There's this recording device. We get the term record from making a record, making an entry. Like before the records like we know them today, the term record or record was a reference to a bookkeeping thing, like to make a record of a financial transaction. That's a thing. So they called the thing a record because it was making like a snapshot of time of music. And so ever since that point, in specifically music technology, we have just increased the capacity to record in different, that slice of time, that slice of history musically. And now we have the ability to do it in our homes, and we put it online, and people around the world can have access to it. And that is leaning into it. We've always leaned into the technology to allow us to be able to do the thing, whatever the thing is, whether it's that guy sitting in the foothills of the Appalachians recording, folk music in its native environment, or today when we're sitting, I can sit on my computer and record things of my own that are different, right? But we leaned into it. Again, my point is, and I know I ramble, Sydney's listened to the ramblings of her father for many decades, and she's prepared for this, but not everybody is. But the reality is that this next generation, where technology is so ingrained into them, where they got a phone in their hand 99% of the day. Technology is the thing that they really lean on, and that can be an issue. And I'm going to throw it back to you a little bit here, Sydney, but it is an issue when the only thing that technology is doing is propping us up and allowing us to maybe seem like we have more skills than we do. And unfortunately, no matter how, and I've seen this in my own life, I've rested on technology and thought that I was really good at a thing. And I've seen it in other people's lives. They've rested on technology. They thought they were really good at a thing. And then the ability of that technology to do the thing is taken away, and they don't have the capacity. So talk about that a little bit for me, Sydney, just from that perspective of, technology is great, but we still have to, going back to the previous thought about technique, and the previous thought before that about collaboration, and even the previous thought before that about communication, all of these things play out in a way that allow us, regardless of our ability to use technology, to be able to do the thing. So yes, technology is great and we need to learn it, but you were talking, I would like for you to expand more on the safety aspect of that when it comes to technology, because I think that is crucial, because technology is something to lean into, not to lean on.
Yeah, absolutely. You were talking about that, and I was actually thinking about kind of bringing this back to talk about it anyway. But I've had the unique opportunity to teach online through the university that I teach with. And I have some students that are in their 60s, and I have some students that are in their 40s, and I have students that are younger than me. But for those of you that are watching and you're in the millennial slash older Gen Z, born in the 90s, the latter 80s time frame where I was born, you might have been wondering, why do you start with teaching students how to use computers if they've been immersed in computers and literally live with a computer in their hand, 24/7? Well, that's because I've actually noticed that with the students that are younger than me, I've actually noticed that they don't know how to use the technology. They actually don't know how to use it. Um, and it's an odd thing. I see a lot of similarities between my students that are in their 60s and my students that are in their 18 to 22 range, or even the ones that are younger that are in high school. They do not have an active knowledge of how, like I asked my students one time, do you understand how your phone screen works? Have you ever stopped and thought about how a touch screen works on a smartphone? Or have you ever stopped and thought about, how does this thing work? And I had one student in a room of 30 people raise their hand and say they had thought about it before. I remember when touchscreens came out and just being enamored by the idea that it could respond to touch and there was no button. And I remember looking it up. I remember researching about it because it was new. And I think that the thing that's happening right now is that there's a lot of online discussion about AI, specifically generative AI in creative areas, especially. There's a lot of conversation on that, but I think it's the same thing as when I was introduced to a touchscreen, right? I went and I researched that, and I was really looking into that, but now that I'm, older, I'm obviously researching AI and doing some of those things as well. Actually a lot. I say some, kind of downplay it, but I've done a lot of research on it. But what I'm noticing is that there's just this acceptance of this is just part of my everyday life, rather than a questioning of how does this thing work? Why is it part of my everyday life? Does it benefit me? What is the benefit? Can I actually explain the benefit? Can I explain the process of use of this item, rather than just, I'm given this item and it's something that I use. And I think that, that at the core of just using technology in general is really, really important. It may not feel like it's a big deal, but the moment you start researching it, you'll understand what I mean. And it goes back to what you were saying. Do I rely on the use of technology to do what I do? If let's say, for example, Dorica, I've mentioned it multiple times, my notation software that I use, if notation software in general no longer existed, would I be able to notate music? Yes, I would be able to notate music. Would other students that are learning only how to notate music in a digital software environment be able to do this? I don't know. It depends on if they actually took the time to create safeguards for themselves and understanding. Right. And so that's really what I mean by safety it's twofold. It's safety of, would I be able to perform if I couldn't digitally create? Is that something I want to do? If it's not, what's my other thing that I want to do? What's the other thing that I can do when technology fails? Because it does, and it will. And I tell my students that all the time. Your technology will fail, right? We were created perfectly in God's image, but we also have the inclusion of sin. So as we create, we do still have that flaw in our systems that we create, and we've created technology. So there's always going to be flaws in our systems, and it will fail. because we have flaws in ourselves, right? So technology is going to fail. So it's the safeguards of what will I do if this happens? Not, again, no, we're not doomsdaying anything, but just, what if that isn't the thing in the industry anymore? Am I mentally prepared for flexing what I'm doing? Right. Flexing to something new. And for my students that are older, in older generations, I've had to talk, I've had some phone calls, some video calls with my students that are in older generations. And it's so interesting because there's a hesitation for inclusion of technology, but there's a large acceptance of the use of AI because it removes the need to learn how to use technology and allow technology to use itself to benefit you. But what happens is that the human part of the equation is removed. And then we start interacting with things that no longer have depth, dimension, or meaning to them. And, to me, whenever I watch a video that's created by AI, or I hear a song that's created by AI, or you see a graphic that's created by AI, a piece of art, and then I'll put quotes around that's created by AI. Yes, there was a prompt that was given. Yes, you had to come up with the prompt that you gave this generative computer. It's a hyper-powered computer, essentially, to really boil it down. But the prompt that you gave only initialized a process that it then completed. Right. And it's drawing from sources that you can give. It's drawing from the resources that it can find. You can restrict resources. You can expand resources. There are a lot of things you can do. And I'm not denying the fact that it was creative in the process of creating AI. I do think that the individuals that created AI were expressing creativity. Absolutely. They created something that did not exist before.
Yep.
However, our use of AI, or our use of technology that integrates AI. When I talk about safety with technology, it's not that, it's out to harm you, but that it can harm your image as you interact with other people. So really taking the time to think about, what does this mean for credibility amongst people who do have different opinions on the use of generative AI? Generative AI is a term that I use loosely. Some people call it creative AI, and I don't agree with that because I think that the people using it are creative and the people that created it were creative, but it's only doing what you've told it that it's able to do, right? So that to me is not creativity. That's a protocol, and that's exactly what it is. And so just it's an interesting thing being kind of in the middle of these two groups of people. I think, people in their 30s to 40s into the early 50s, kind of that range. It's about 20 to 25 years. From what I've seen in conversations I've had, there have been, that's where most of the skepticism lives for, the inclusion of new technologies and AI and things like that. It's not anti-use of technology, but it's pro safety in usage of technology and pro knowledge and understanding of technology, rather than let's boycott this, never use technology, but how we use it is very important. And I think that, as a group of people in our, that span of ages that I mentioned at the time of this video, obviously. But that group of people, it's really a responsibility for us as we think about these things, as we process these things, to communicate with other people, not communicate out of frustration, but communicate out of a desire to improve the quality of creative processes, the quality of use of different technologies and things like that. And really just a desire to walk alongside people rather than tell people our opinions and where we stand, but really to just walk on that path with the person that you care about. Ultimately comes down to that at the end of the day. But yeah, that would be my thoughts on being safe in the use of technology in a world where everything runs on technology.
That's good. Well, in our world today, it is next to impossible to get away from technology. And that, well, it has some good and some bad to it. Because of technology, we are more connected than we have ever been. And because of technology, we are more isolated and lonely than we probably ever have been. Technology allows us to create in ways that we could only imagine a few years ago, and technology has the potential to take every creative occupation away from humanity. We have hit on that subject before in a series about AI. There's a card and a link to that as well. Anyway, we can see that technology is a big part of a bunch of creative endeavors. And that fact has made an understanding of technology and using technology a vital part of the majority of our creative endeavors, which in turn means that it can be a big part of our creative education as well. I want to encourage you to learn the technology that you need to do the creative endeavors. Don't fear using technology within reason, and don't be afraid to not use it as well. Again, within reason. God gave us the skills, talents, and abilities that we each have to use them for His glory. He gave us, not technology. But we can still use technology alongside our creative abilities to create amazing things. So, with or without technology, let me encourage you to go, create, and be a blessing. You can support our channel by subscribing, hitting that bell icon to get notified when new content comes out, and liking our videos. If you'd like to consider supporting our team financially, there's a link in the video description with more details. Those things will help our channel for sure, but if you do nothing else, please spend some time in the comments of our videos encouraging one another to create, to help others create, and to help grow that creative nature within us all. Oh, and you can check out these videos too. Thanks. We'll see you again soon.